Seema, thank you so much for taking out the time to talk to StratNewsGlobal and Global Compass. My first question to you is, of course, you have, I'm sure, very keenly been watching the election results. What were the main narratives that were highlighted by the international media when it came to the results?
Thank you for having me. And yes, the election coverage has been very interesting. In the run up to the election, most of the coverage, I would say, was negative in some form or another. There was a lot of talk about the opposition not having enough space, the arrest of Kejriwal and uh, Rahul Gandhi, and Congress party's funds being frozen, etc. So there was a lot of coverage of that, and whether Indian democracy has is under stress in the run up. And I would like to mention that in the New York Times, they must have found just about every academic in South Asian studies to sort of weigh in. And most of those articles were negative and very quite strongly negative. After the results came out, and the BJP did not win the kind of number of seats that it expected, there was almost, you could feel the glee in the writing. There's a kind of uh, yeah, glee is the best word to describe it. Everyone's enjoying the fact that he did not win the 400 seats as projected and as he had talked about. So most of the coverage is about how his aura of invincibility is now cracked, how he has got a rebuke from the Indian voter, how he has been humbled. Uh, there's a lot of emphasis on all that, and how yes. And then the second part of the narrative is, oh, well, the Indian democracy works, that the voters can choose to punish someone they are unhappy with. And everyone noted the fact that the Prime Minister's party did not win in Ayodhya, where the Ram temple was inaugurated.
The negative bias against Mr. Modi has always been there. And, it's been there even, during the Godhra, since the time of Godhra, in fact, and thereafter. And even in the past decade, you're saying that this bias has always been there. Is that what you're saying? Were there no neutral voices?
To be perfectly honest, Narendra Modi is not a favorite of the Western media, no matter whether development has taken place in the last 10 years under his premiership or not. That's kind of a side story for the Western media, I would say, by and large. Um, some newspapers, I must point out, like the Wall Street Journal, I think do a better job of reporting on those kinds of stories than, let's say, the hallowed mainstream media like the New York Times and the Washington Post, maybe the LA Times, and in the UK, I would say the Guardian. So the Wall Street Journal, even after the results came out, was perhaps the only one that I noticed. Um, that made the point of noting, and I'll tell you of what they said, um, that it belies the fact um, that all of that Modi has zero support, that the results show that Modi still enjoys substantial support, um, and that India's recent gains Like many people said that India's recent gains are kind of an illusion spun by the government propaganda machine. So, and that's not true, because obviously some of the development has reached some of the people, and the verdict is a very complex one. As you know, Indians understand that it's not either or in such a black and white manner. It's a very complex verdict. And so I think the Wall Street Journal was perhaps the only one that noted that. Everyone's just too busy having a good time at the humbling of Modi.
Right. But earlier you said that the media noted that democracy works in India. So that obviously means that the VDEM report that had said that India is heading towards an autocracy and all of that. So that kind of, that narrative again was brought down by these results, would you say?
Yes, absolutely. And everyone's taking a step back now, because I don't think anyone expected this result, because all the exit polls were showing a certain number. All of the Western media was covering based on the Indian media reports and the Indian mainstream media. Um, the Western media was just following the lead. It's not as if they were doing some, independent polling of their own. So everyone was surprised. And the fact that the Indian voter can do what it did, just is testament to the fact that, yes, Indian democracy is very strong and resilient. And I think it's foolish to predict or say otherwise. And many people have had to eat a humble pie about that, and VDEM included. I mean, to have declared that Indian democracy does not work, I think was just a little bit foolish.
But how is the international media? Have they already started delving into how foreign policy is going to shape up now, or how the geopolitical dynamics is going to shape up?
Yes, so many have commented that in terms of foreign policy, there won't be any, changes as such that governments should worry about. Most likely, the BJP will retain the external affairs portfolio. Everyone is familiar with Mr. Jaishankar. So I think on that count, there's a bit of satisfaction, shall I say, or maybe even relief that policy wise, not much is going to change. Some more astute observers have noted that the last 10 years, the government of India has managed to be on the good side of so many different power centers in the world. It's got a great relationship with the United States. It's maintained a good, solid relationship with Russia, despite the problem the US has with Russia. It's managed to have uh, improving relations with a lot of the Arab countries. So they notice all that. And so under Modi, Indian foreign policy has become sort of clearer and multifaceted, with, I would say, equal weight in every block of power centers. So many American observers appreciate that, even admire that. They may not agree with Indian foreign policy on some of the issues, but they appreciate the fact that India is much closer today to the United States, let's say, than it was a few years ago. And because of the West looking at China as the major adversary, India is very important in countering and balancing of China. So, from all those points of view, I think the fact that the government is going to be largely the same in terms of foreign policy, because I don't think any of the NDA allies are going to demand that some drastic change be made to Indian foreign policy. And if we look at history, foreign policy has kind of been a bipartisan
Yes.
issue. Uh,
Right from NAM, right from the non-aligned movement, perhaps.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, governments may give different names to the
Yeah.
same inclination, like non alignment today is multipolarity, third world today is global south. India wants to be a leader of the global south, and it's now performing a very important role of being a bridge between the global south countries and the west, especially the US.
This is the world's largest democracy. And there is very interesting things going on in US as well when it comes to the elections. Elections are right just around the corner. So is there any comparison between the democratic processes between the two countries, or what do you observe as an Indian origin woman staying living in Washington? What is your observation?
See, the two systems are so different. India has a multi party democracy, it's a parliamentary system. Here you have a two-party presidential system. The society here is so deeply polarized. In India, also, there is polarization,
It's
but of
increased
a
over the past
different
few years.
kind.
Ah,
It's
right.
more. I would say more along caste, class, economic lines. Here it's more along maybe ideological lines. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party barely agree on anything, but it should be noted they do agree on a strong relationship with India. Having said that, elections here have been marred by so many controversies. If you remember, um, the last election, people stormed the US Capitol, January 6th. There was violence, there were threats against the outgoing vice president, and cases and hearings in the Congress. So it's being tested. American democracy is being tested in a way it has never been. Um, and we don't know what might happen in this election, because those who might lose will or may not accept the results, and it might be litigated. So, America has the dubious distinction of giving this new term to the whole democratic world. It's called election denialism. So, there's a lot of people here who just don't believe that Trump is no longer the president, and that they believe that Joe Biden stole the election. And it's very serious. It's like they fervently believe that. They have all kinds of theories. Um, there's a whole ecosystem of podcasters and right-wing websites that propagate this view. So what I would say is that India is in a better place in some ways in conducting the election process, much better. I mean, imagine the number of voters India has, number of people who cast ballots, the number of voting booths, and the logistics involved. Yes, it takes a long time, but in the US, it's there's a lot of issues, and I think that's why Americans have become a little more cautious in commenting quickly on other democracies. You notice officially the US reaction has been very calm, muted, and sober. It's Newspapers are another world. I mean, media has its own compulsions and
Yeah.
ideology, or whatever you
And
want to call
its
it,
own biases as well. Yeah.
own biases, just like the Indian mainstream has.
Yes. 100%. Yeah.
That's why they kind of missed this whole undercurrent of discontent this time, right? Or they were willfully not covering it, or they didn't think it was serious. So, Similarly, here the American media has certain inclinations, but officially, the American system and establishment has become much more cautious about deriding or denouncing or criticizing other democratic systems because they themselves are under great stress.
Well, that's wonderfully explained. Thank you so much for that. My last question to you, and this I think is important, and interesting as well. The 2014. It is often said that even the Indian media largely was not very much in favor of Mr. Modi, and he bypassed the traditional media and went directly to the people through social media. You know, and that kind of worked in his favor. Uh, how is the international how did the international media look at the role social media and this kind of technology, the role it played in shaping public opinion? And also, if you can give me a comparison with what's happening in us.
Okay, so almost every Western journalist noted the videos of Dhruv Rati and the huge following that he has. They noted the fact that the opposition and the quote unquote free media now only has space in on YouTube or social media realm. They Because the mainstream media and mainstream channels were just so one-sided that they missed the story. Basically, I mean, let's be frank. They missed the story, just like the American media completely missed the story of Donald Trump. you know, when Donald Trump won the election in 2016, the media here had really no clue. They thought Hillary Clinton was winning because of the polling and their own inherent biases, etc. And they kind of looked down upon Donald Trump. Similarly, 2014, the Indian elite media, the liberal media, kind of looked down upon Modi and the Hindutva ecosystem. They didn't see the connection of how he was appealing to the people on various issues and how the Congress government had been saddled with so many, corruption problems, etc., etc.
And policy paralysis, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So now the social media has that space is become very important for all manner of political forces, opposition, the party in power, whoever have you. Everyone's using this space, which creates its own problems. So of course there are some people who are very serious users of social media. They do the research and then they do their podcasts or do their reports, but there are many who just fulminate, either from the left or from the right, and that's not healthy. I feel, as an old fashioned journalist, I still feel you need regular reporters to be the mediator between what's going on in the ground and the viewer or the reader, to interpret and to report in an unbiased fashion. So yeah, many podcasters are great, but many are not. They are, especially I would say in the US, there are many who spread all sorts of theories that people sitting in their homes are watching and listening to, and they are convinced of the most bizarre things.
Correct. There's also the whole issue of confirmation bias, as we say. That is, I think, that plays a very big role when it comes to shaping mindsets, and the very important role that media plays, including social media. So I think we all need to be cognizant of the fact, and I always argue that the role of a journalist becomes all the more important with the advent of technology, because the journalist can provide a context. which an ordinary content creator can't.
This applies to both Indian journalists as well as American journalists. Do not have a sense of superiority, whether you come from the left or from the right. The right looks down upon the left, and the left looks down upon the right, and there is no meeting ground. And everybody thinks they've just got it right, and that's often not the case.
Yeah.
Reality is a very mixed bag, a very complex situation. Mhm.
The truth is in between.
Yes, many times.
Great. Okay, lovely talking to you, Seema. Thank you so much for once again for taking out the time and speaking to Global Compass. I look forward to many such interesting conversations with you because now we are heading into more and more interesting times ahead, I think.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking to you.